Hey everybody, welcome to the, this is the 4th episode of Citizen Central. This is my monthly podcast that I do, where I bring in some of the other people from around the community and we chat about some of the bigger topics in Star Citizen. And I'd like to thank all of the guests today for coming. Thanks guys for making the time on your busy Mondays, coming out here and chatting with me about a topic that has not been chatted to death about, but we're going to do it anyways. How are you guys doing today?
Very good.
Good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Good to hear it. Good to hear it. So today is a big topic, big conversation about open development, communication with CIG, and the community. Obviously, something that, like I said, has been talked about to death. But I wanted to sit down and have a nice talk about it because I think this is a really good time with a lot of stuff going on with 3.18, things coming up with 4.0, persistent entity streaming, and just a lot of different topics have been around this year that have gotten people a little riled up. So I thought I'd get your opinions on not just that, but the overall idea of open development around this project and kind of how it's been treating you lately, what you guys think we could do better with it in terms of our relationship with CIG. So why don't we start with the basics? How long has you guys, I think, have all been following this for way longer than me, right? Like everybody here is since the first couple years of development.
I've aged significantly.
Who's
been
got
it's been a
the
long time.
who's been here the longest? I'll ask that.
Kickstarter day one, so I don't know if that's I don't want to boast or anything, but yeah.
I don't want to brag.
I spotted Star Citizen during its Kickstarter and got
There you go.
and played for something, but I wasn't covering or interested in it. I was just like, looks like a cool game.
Yeah, I'm like bored. Same thing. I was playing Eve. Someone in Eve told me about it. Came in right at the tail end of Kickstarter. Looked at it. Back then, kickstarting wasn't a big thing. It was still kind of iffy. And I think I probably, sometime in 2013, was when I finally signed up and dropped in.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the same way. I was playing Eve with the boys, and I was getting a little bored of the gameplay. And I saw the trailer where Chris was, talking about how he wants PC gaming to kind of make a return, and he had this old model of the Bengal way back in the day, and I was like, this game looks great. And then that's when I signed in, and that was it. That was
the Eve players came over here in force. I see. Well,
that's right.
Yeah, I'm from Eve as well. Like originally, I love Eve.
Cool. I couldn't do it. I tried Eve. I did. I played it for like 2 months, I think. And funny enough, this was probably like 2008 or 2009. I was playing for a couple months and I was like, man, this is hard. I can't get a grasp of it. I'm already so far behind. Like I'm so late to the game. I guess I should just quit now. And then what is it, like 12, 14 years later and it's still chugging.
You can jump into Eve now even and have some good fun.
Yeah.
Don't believe him. You see boards bald and I'm great. You don't want to play Eve. You don't want to play Eve.
I thought that was Star Citizen.
Isn't it a spreadsheet simulator? That's what I've always heard it called, was spreadsheet simulator. Like I played the demo, but I never really got into it, like because it just didn't have enough interactivity.
There's some solid combat, and escalation between orgs is fun in like Zero Sec. Like there's some good fun to be had in Eve. It's a bit changed over the last few years, but
I'm going to derail just for a second. I came out of Star Wars Galaxies and went to Eve only because Eve was the only thing around at that point for me. And that's what got me in there. So then, of course, this came up and got a blend of both.
That also seems kind of like a common thread. Star Wars Galaxies, Star Citizen, Eve, Star Citizen. It's a common thing. We're here live, by the way, for anybody who's listening to this after the fact. Just got rated by Croncy, another streamer, and somebody who was on the previous podcast we did with this show. Thank you so much for bringing all your people over to us to listen to this conversation, which is going to be super fun and all positive. Promises.
Total lies, but okay, yeah, sure.
All right. So it's been a good 10 years now for most of you, considering you're all kind of Kickstarter time period. Your idea of the game back then, actually, I guess let's say this. Back then, when you first backed, do you think that you would have still been playing the game by now? Did you think the game would have been still in development by now? Like, what's reflecting on
I've
that?
waited longer for a Banner Merchantman than I've waited for most games.
yeah.
I've been waiting for a while, and I figured like ever since they started doing those $10 million, we're going to do this, and then we're going to add this, and then we're going to add this. As soon as they hit that mark, and I was like, all right, we're in this for the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And they were giving us stuff way back in the day, and I kind of chuckled. I always told this, like, from the beginning, guys who've known me can verify this. I've always said, it's like, look, if they can do half of what they're saying, and get it done within the next X amount of years, it's like the game's going to be the best game that I've ever played.
There's some magic going on, because if I talked to my past self, I think I would have said, no, obviously you'll be done with Star Citizen. It would be fully released and you'll be done with it by now and moving on to something else. Like that would be done and dusted a few years ago. You'll be bored of it. But I'm not bored of Star Citizen. It's not even nearly done, and I'm playing it. So, and that's like World of Warcraft and a load of other MMOs. I'm just done with it. Just done. Like, what voodoo is this?
Now they can easily tout that they have like the longest average lifespan for players, because the game's going to launch and we're going to finally be like, okay, now I can get started. You're 10 years into your Star Citizen career already.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that everybody comes into the game from different perspectives too. I know Avenger 1 was here from the very beginning, he says, and for people who came in under Squadron 42, there's a different feeling than people who came in for the persistent universe. Even though Squadron caught my attention, because I came out of Eve, I wanted that universe, but just different. And I knew that was going to take time. And of course, in the early days, there was this, the dates that were, and people kind of mixed the two, because, whenever there were announcements about what was coming out, people could say, oh, Star Citizen's going to come out in 2 years. It wasn't Star Citizen, it was Squadron 42. So I never had that issue of the dates per se, because my head was more about the persistent universe. I said to myself, at least 10 years to get that. So I've been fairly content because of that, but I do feel for the people who came in that earlier part who were looking for that single player game, and that's what they bought into. And unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but they were slightly overruled, because the community was the one that said, hey, no, Chris, we'll give you some more money. Let's make that thing you really want to make. Yep. And that changes the perspective for some of those earlier people who backed.
I'm not sure if that's what Chris really wanted to make. Like, he got far too much money, and it's exploding. Well, they're going to make over 100 million this year in funding.
You do know the game's expanded 3 times, right? So it expanded after Kickstarter, and it expanded after Puberty Planet, and so basically because of that, the game's kind of been reset or restarted 3 times.
And you feel
and expanded, yeah.
And you feel like
is that so bad?
Well, depends on
I feel like it reset, and maybe you guys may know more than me. But remember when they had so many subcontracted stuff out of the other companies that they were working with? There was like 6 or 7 companies that subcontracted third-party companies. And when all of that kind of collapsed, and they kind of decided to, as you put it, execute reset and say, let's bring everything in-house, and we're going to do all our own tools. We're going to do all that. I felt that was a huge step. And for some people who don't know that, we're talking, 2014, 2015, roughly, when that happened.
Around that. When Frankfurt came on board, wasn't it?
Yeah, around there. So for to me, and I hate to say this because sometimes people think it's an excuse, to me, that's when things started. I give them that building a business year is the first year, which a lot of businesses do. They try a lot of different things to get things in place. Some things work, some things don't. But I felt like once they made that decision, which was a big decision, because yes, there was time, money, and resources invested, but at least at that point, it seems like that track has maintained after that.
Yeah, you can definitely see the path going as they kind of figured things out in a major way. And I think that happened again too recently, not necessarily in the same way as it did back then, but they kind of they turned another corner in terms of how they understood the development. You could see that they started to get a little more efficient in the last couple of years.
Just real quick, Space, when did you come into the game? Because you're the only one that didn't say, so I'm just kind of curious. Are you the young gun here? Because
I am. Well, yeah. I mean, not by much. I
know. I saw the game under the bus.
I saw the game probably early 2014, I think, and then backed late 2014. So I'm like a year behind you guys.
Yeah, you're the youngster.
Hey. Well, anyways, so regarding all of this journey that we've been on, and all these different restarts and resets and whatnot we've seen, the constant has been Star Citizen and CIG as a whole's sort of responsibility of open development. This is the stance they took. They are openly funding the game. They're doing ship sales. They are building the game in front of us. and they are also we're testing for them, and they're communicating with us based on what's going on. Certain people will say it is open. Certain people will say it's not. You'll get all kinds of answers from in between. But how has it been, in your opinion, over the years? How have they done with this sort of open development? And do you think it's actually been good for them or detrimental? We'll start with Avenger. We'll go around. We'll do a little clockwise thing.
I think it's been a little bit of both. I think the open development, for the large part, has been, I think, a positive. On the negative side, there's been some things that have been taken a little bit too far out of context, and I not so much blame, but I feel like the responsibility lies on maybe the hype of the community, but also I think CIG has taken advantage of that in some situations, and I think that has made some people a little bit pissed off, and for good reason. And I think CIG learned from those mistakes that perhaps would never have been had if, let's say, you were CD Projekt Red or Naughty Dog or whatever, right? I think for the most part it's good. I think there were some setbacks.
When you
to say the
say
least.
when you say that those other companies wouldn't have those problems, is that because of their
You wouldn't know
maturity in
about
the
them.
industry? Oh, okay, because they're
Yeah, you
more
wouldn't.
closed down.
You wouldn't know about them, right? Two, a lot of times there's, and here's one of the downsides of open development. And I, not to like stand up and try to defend CIG for everything, but there are people that are put in front of the camera that perhaps would never be put in front of the camera if they were working for any other company.
Fair,
right?
Yeah.
And that is not their fault. That is not CIG's fault. That is the nature of open development. You're going to have cameras put in people's faces that perhaps either don't want to have the camera in their face or feel like it's just a part of the job and whatever, right? And some people, will take that and they will abuse that openness, right? Which I know. It's part of, I guess, the process.
Okay. Yeah. So do you feel like they've gotten more or less open over time?
I think they've slowly closed the door because I think some of their individuals, and for good reason, have been attacked by members of the community. And I think if you're working 9-to-5 job and you go there and, you shouldn't have to really deal with some of the online trolling that has happened to some of the individuals. What happened to Sandy, what happened to some of the other devs. It's pretty shitty.
Real quick, we can hear someone typing.
No, you can't. Can't prove
Ford!
nothing.
Ford, you naughty boy!
Prove nothing.
Right?
Board's been caught red-handed.
Yeah.
Like, not to open a can of worms, but I mean, if we're talking truth here, let's talk truth, right?
Can I put a little question out?
Yes.
Do you
First, I
guys
lost your
remember-
visual execute. I can't see your face anymore.
What? You lost my face.
Your
That's-
face is gone.
I was
OBS,
typing.
he's still
You've got no face.
I
Board
can
was-
see my face,
Board
but
was
I can
hacking
see
your
everyone
stream.
else.
Yeah, he's still here in OBS. It's probably OBS on your
Yeah.
phone. It'll
Okay.
act up. Sometimes you have to reset. Sometimes if you reset, it'll do it.
Yeah, I don't see him
Yeah, I
on
can see everyone else.
video.
Okay.
All right, go ahead and
Okay.
keep going. Execute.
So I wanted to ask, when do you think that the closed development really started? Because for me, I think the first incident that I ever really remember was when they talked about the freelancer cockpit. Do you remember that? Like, we're going way back here. And do you remember that they got somewhat, like a bunch of people in the community complained that it had all these struts and stuff. So they spent 2 days reworking it. And they said it won't work. And then after the 2 days of reworking it, it didn't work. And from then on, they've been just closing slowly, like you said, Avenger. Is that where you guys remember it starting? Or I guess maybe I'm
Man,
I disagree
in
with
the
the
minority.
premise of closed development, but I'll come to that when I talk about it, I suppose.
I'm not saying it's fully closed. I'm just saying, like what Avenger said, is it's definitely narrowed.
It may be more focused. I use my politician words here, but I do think they've become overall more open, or at least they do show us more stuff overall.
Right.
okay.
Well,
Yeah. Go ahead, Bort.
Perhaps
think-
maybe, sorry, go on.
no, after you, mate.
Perhaps maybe stuff that's a little bit too much in the alpha stage they have pulled back from, and stuff that's a little more refined. They're like, okay, now it's a little bit more ready for, let's show them that. Whereas it used to be like, here's the original, like, here's the thing we did this morning about the concept. People are like, it's terrible. What is happening?
I think they hate showing stuff now that's not near gameplay. It's not nearly ready. They want to go, and nearly ready, I mean within a year, roughly. And anything beyond that is too far out, or too much of a pipe dream, or too much of a gameplay demo that may never exist in the right way. They've sort of focused development into a little bit blinkered, but there's still a lot they're showing us, but it's very much sort of like, well, let's talk about 3.18 to 4.0. Let's sort of focus on that, the things we are actually actively working on, developing, whiteboxing, and because of that, we don't have any sort of idea what's happening with a load of gameplay mechanics like science or exploration or any of these things that we should really have a bit of a deep dive document on, or they at least should share how they work or where they're going with it currently. But they're too scared to show that because they might change it from the idea that they have, and they'd rather iteratively change it, which apparently doesn't cause as much anger or annoyance. It does. It causes the same amount. But I think
you're 100% right. They're scared, aren't they, in a little way?
At least a bit. They've lost the small developer vibe and become this. It's no longer like a mom and pop developer. It's no longer the connection with Chris Roberts.
Yep.
It's much more of a, well, they're now a corporate beast that's at least partly guided by marketing. And that is never good. Well, It's good for funding.
Do you think you can track it back to when the board came in? You know how they set up the board? Because I think a lot of it's got to do with the board.
That makes them more corporate, I suppose, doesn't it?
They have a board.
Yeah. So when they took out that 45 million that got up to 45 million, it got up like 12 months later. Mm-hmm. When they came in, it looks like a part of that agreement was to set up a board. And I think the board has a little bit more control now. And it seems like a little bit of the control has been taken away from Sandy and Chris. I could be wrong, but that's what it feels like to me. Because it's part of the board. Yeah, that's where it happened, when the board got set up. So, yeah.
I want to build off something Board was going with. In the early days, a lot of the presentations that we saw, especially at CitizenCon and stuff, was the vision of where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I think that the community, in the midst of, to Avenger One's point where he says about kind of we build our own hype, a lot of times the community saw something and figured, oh, it's coming out in the next patch or it's coming out in the next year. Let's go back to the old adage of the sandworm, right?
Boy.
That video, I'm not even talking about the sandworm. We saw dynamic weather effects. We saw a sandstorm. We saw the Tuscan Raiders. I mean, it was all types of stuff in that video, right?
We saw static weather effects. I tell you that.
Right. Remember the storm that blew through the abandoned javelin?
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and it was difficult not to get excited about it. But I think that there was also the aspect of not realizing that was done on a single client machine right then and there. They were showing it to us. And because most of us are ignorant in the sense of what it takes to develop a game on an MMO multiplayer level, we didn't realize just because we saw it there, it may take 5 years, 6 years for some of those things to come into play.
But isn't that a problem? Isn't that a problem with the way that Cloud Imperium
and that's my point. And that's my point, because in the beginning, it was about the vision of where they wanted to go. Even the fact that the thing said Lear 3 and Lear isn't even in our system, people still wanted the Sandworm and Stanton, right? So here's my point. As time has gone by, as you mentioned, Board, they've started to narrow it and make it more about what we can produce very quickly now where our technology allows us. We're not seeing the visionary stuff so much. Most of the stuff that we see, take into example, this past 6-8 months, they've been showing us nothing but those still pictures of Pyro and what Ruin Station is going to look like. Well, that's probably because within the next year, we will see Pyro at that point. So in a way, people wanted to see that extra visionary stuff, because remember when they pulled that stuff back, that CitizenCon, people went crazy because they were like, well, where's the rest of the presentation? How come Chris isn't out here doing his big presentation anymore? Then the community went the other direction and felt like, oh, they're not showing us anything anymore. They've pulled back on what they're showing us. So I think we've kind of been in that weird space between those two places. And for some people, just like when the roadmap got pulled back, there are some people who the roadmap a year out didn't bother them. And then there are other people that when it went short, it didn't bother them. Like right now, I'm glad it went short. I hate to say it. I like the 1 year thing. But guess what? Since they cut that roadmap, you don't hear no more static. People aren't complaining like they used to about they didn't deliver. They promised this. This was supposed to be on blah. All that has gone away. Now, for me, I hate it because it didn't bother me when they had that year thing out, because I understood that that's all projected and that it could change. And as much as they say that, hate to say it, but you guys know how gamers are. They want their games when they want them, regardless of what that little clause is on the bottom that you check and say,
They made the right
like a
decision there.
change.
They made the right
Yeah.
decision. I think.
Well,
I mean,
Well,
everybody's
well,
got their own
so-
opinion
so-
on it. I think they did.
So that it's hardboard because you can literally not just normal people that play the game. You actually look at content creators that don't get it as well. So my whole point being is there is a whole different spectrum of people, and they've obviously got to the point where they're just sick of the complaints. So they pulled that. And I am like Griffin. I would much rather to get those details, but we just don't get them anymore because there are people that just don't understand how games are made, and that they were never promises. They were like, this is our expectation. This is what we're aiming for. And people, how many times did they tell us that over the years? Hundreds of times we've heard that. And they just got sick of it.
Well, no, CIG. I'm sorry to say this. They have their feels hurt when people complain, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't. They should go. We'll give you as much information as possible, as far out as possible. It's going to change because we're showing you our internal roadmaps. It's going to change a lot. None of this is going to be the same. I'm not sure why we're giving it to you, but we are because you want it because it's an open development. But they need to stop being so like, oh no, it's hard to be a game developer when you're being mean. Okay, but people aren't being that mean, and it's the internet, and people are assholes.
But
maybe
do they have to worry about image at this point with Squadron being the thing that they're trying to worry about now? I mean, I'm just asking, is it now that they do have to, not from the feelings aspect, but I'm talking about bad press. I mean, do they really need bad press at this point that's constant, the Forbes stuff, all that crap? I mean, that stuff's gone away. I hate to say it. You don't see any periodicals writing crap now since they wrote about them. And that was weird. Even the freaking online art magazines complained about them cutting back on the roadmap, which I thought was hilarious.
I think maybe they need to change them and call them estimates or something like that. Like, so it's more realistic.
It's never going to matter. It's just like
people have
like
always thought it would
sounds too, cult. Like we threw the bones and it said pyro in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to go back though real quick to something that Griffin was saying, in that the way that they used to share stuff that was very visionary, it was very pie in the sky, it was big, we weren't getting it for a while, and now they do things that are more realistic, and I agree on that. We get to see, I keep going back to this, and I know people are probably sick of it at this point, but they have started to show us concept art that's gotten into the game within half a year. And I feel like they never would have done that before. And that's great. But at the same time, there is a lot of stuff that we know is being worked on that you have to ask, is it worth it for them to be open enough for us to know, even if there's nothing big, nothing worth updating us on that's going on with those things, should we still be hearing about them? Especially if there's things that kind of have incomplete messaging on. So what I'm thinking right now is the quantum economy simulator. The last official update we got on it, that was like a big update, was last summer, about 18 months ago. And we were told, hey, this is expected to be in some way, probably with just a couple, refuel, rearm, repair stuff, by the end of the year. End of the year came and went. We never heard about it. Nobody said anything. We got all the way to the point where I think 3.17 was coming out, and they finally again said, okay, now the refuel, rearm, and repair stuff's coming out. But don't forget about how before we said we'd be updating it every patch after that, because we haven't heard anything since then for almost six months now about the quantum economy. I think that's something that's really hurting the game at this point, but we just have no clue what's going on with it. So when it comes to things like that,
The economy.
pull up another thing like iCache or PES or 3.18 and how it's been delayed. How are you feeling about the way that they're treating the community and not letting them know things as soon as they know? Because obviously they know some of this stuff.
I think you're... Go ahead.
Do they know? Like,
come on.
There's lots of go no go meetings. There's lots of go no go meetings, and they push stuff and they go, well, actually, it's not going to be ready because of this reason, and that might only come in 2 weeks before they actually tell us about it.
But
quite genuinely, not always.
Let's look at like how they've communicated PES and 3.18 to us, right? We were all kind of on the same page that we would be seeing 2 to 3 months of testing. It'd go to Evocati at a certain date. That date went by. That day went by a month. That day went by a month and a couple weeks. And like we weren't told anything until finally we were told something. And that date has also gone by. So it's hard to go back to that original date when we were told all the way back then that something was happening and not think they learned some important information in that time.
It does make you wonder, what if it's also internal communication that's a problem?
Yeah, it's got to be a part of that. The company's massive. They've got load of new studios. They're moving in. They're transitioning from work to home, back to work in the office. Must be a logistical nightmare for them, as well as a structural nightmare. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's an excuse. I'm just saying that's a way of describing the chaos.
Yeah, I feel weird about it. I'll go back to something you mentioned, I think, in our questions originally. You guys remember when we went through the whole SOX to iCache to PES, and there were struggles through that. And we didn't hear about the struggles till after the fact. And I wonder if that's because when CIG presents something, if they and maybe they feel that if we present it while we're in the mix, in other words, we've hit a roadblock and we're starting to think iCache is not sufficient. Is that a situation where the community can handle that? I think there are some people in here who can. And I also believe there are some people who, and that goes out, I'm being serious, they honestly can't handle it. And I think maybe that's the decision that they go with, is that we're going to, when we get the hurdle beat, we'll say it, which is what they did this time. They said, oh yeah, well, we found out that iCache couldn't sufficiently do this and blah, blah, blah. So we went to PES. Now, will we run into the same problem with PES? We don't know. But I just wondered that tightrope of what's the word? The perception of the progress of the thing. I'm just not so sure that the gamers, and I hate to take that against the gamers, but I have to base it upon the history of how they've responded when things don't go well.
So you're talking about the Band-Aid analogy. Do you pull it off slowly, or do you just rip it the hell off? And that is it, is it not?
Yeah.
And I don't know, but for me, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm more blunt, so I'd rather it ripped off rather than sugar coated. And it's more straightforward and easy to understand and more transparent.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Well, this goes back to kind of the whole point of the open development. Sorry, I've got the call to prayer in the background, but how open is too open, right? Is it too open for them to give us updates on whether or not if a game company comes out and says, hey, we're working on this, it might work, it might not, we don't know. Like, that is, like you said, Griff, that's too much info for some people, because in any major project you work on, everybody who's got, that involved in their job knows you don't always know if what you're doing is going to work out until you get to a certain point. Like, when it comes to open development, how open do you want it to be?
Let me say this. Let me prelude this, and you guys please feel free to jump in on this. Star Citizen is the most open development game I've ever seen.
Yep.
In reality. I'm saying in comparison to other games, okay? Yeah. The problem is that the word open is relative to everybody. How far does the door, I mean, is it 80% open? Is it 70%? Even if it's 20%, that's more than what a lot of people get. I think that because open for some people means they want to know everything that happens. Some people are content with 50%. So when we keep using that term, it's so difficult to nail down, because different people have different expectations of what that phrase open development means.
But even if you were working at CIG in a relatively high position, you still wouldn't know what all of the company is doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. They even say that themselves.
Time's a factor too, because like if you think about it, we've all kind of been here since the beginning, and a guy that's turned up like Space probably, and I don't mean to be rude, Space, but probably doesn't know as much as we do, because we saw all that
super
stuff.
Rude, dude.
Yeah, super rude. But you know what I mean? Like, the more you come along, the less you know, because there's also that overlap, like new stuff that's been replaced and stuff like that. So we've seen things that's been replaced. So what I'm trying to say is, as time has gone on, they've become more and more narrow, because the crowd as a whole has become more and more casual. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Sorry if that came off rude, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's actually, this is probably starting to stray a little bit away from the main point of the topic, but it's funny to see how much, not you, me, how much you get statements like people are like, yo, this resource management is too much, like this is going to be too much for the game, or like it happened last year, this Death of a Spaceman stuff, this is a lot.
It's the latest one.
Or somebody was talking about bed logs, like, oh, bed logs, like why do we have to be in a bed to log in and out? And it's like, you see these things that have been sort of staples that we all just expect for a while start to be
I don't
questioned.
want spaceships in my MMO. What's going on here?
The skills is the latest one that I heard. You know, at CitizenCon, people they've just thrown skills at us, and now people are really worried. And I want more complexity, not less complexity.
But I would say that the skills and attributes thing is genuinely something entirely new that they've thrown at us.
Agreed.
Yeah. That before that, that's the sort of evolutions of things, or they have told us it before and then reiterated that it's going to be like this.
But it gives you an example of people freaking out. How about we wait and see it before we, jump down their throats? And that's like I said with the freelancer stuff way back before. As soon as that came out, people were straight down the throats going, this won't work. And then there's developers that are going to say, well, actually, the way you're trying to do it won't work. And then as soon as they got them to do all the work and they went, oh, yeah, shit, it doesn't work, instantly started locking down. Ever since then, they were showing concept art every day. They were doing all this stuff. And just as time's gone on, narrower and narrower.
Can I throw a question up? Do you guys remember when a couple of years ago when all the hubbub came up about Squadron 42 and the whole silence period? And
Yes.
remember they came out with that teaser, and then they did that episode 1 of the what was it called? Briefing Room. Remember that? And they said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Chris Roberts,
Still waiting on episode 2.
Flipping. Yeah, remember Brian Chambers and Aaron were going to flip.
Pillow talk.
And we were going to start getting this new thing called, and we got one episode.
Yep.
That's the type of stuff that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Because people were like, good, finally, we're going to hear something. Even it's quarterly. I agree with you, Execute. I loved Pillar Talks. Pillar Talks were great to me because even though it's great to hear from all the other devs and the people who are down there working in the trenches, when you see those department heads sit around the table and talk about where they're at and what the hurdles are, that was always reassuring for me of where the project was going. I've said it several times to Disco in the community, guys, you guys need to bring that back. You can't have Chris all the time, but we respect Sean, Tracy, and all these other people, and I would love to hear from them more.
How long is it since we've seen Sean Tracy? This was
Where's
like 2 years.
Gears of War?
He's working on it.
Well, I've got a theory on that. I'll tell you about that later. I've got a quick question. Best show they ever did was Calling All Devs. Low effort, low production values, and it just got the data out there.
Oh, you're speaking my language. That's the title for my channel.
They care too much about production value. I want the information. I don't care how pretty Jared looks, whether he's had a haircut or not. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, but they got good, nice new thumbnails.
Yeah, but then there are people who don't like Calling All Devs. They like the shiny stuff from ISC the day before, and they won't even sit through. Oh, it's too boring. Oh, and you and I know there's a lot of data and information.
Yeah, I'm one of those
sometimes
guys.
those offbeat shows, but there's some people who just don't like it. That's the tough part about it, and hopefully some people get it from the Sugary Show on Thursday.
What Nubify's for?
Brainiacs do Fridays. This is your Nubify.
That's what Nubify's for, yeah. It's for those people that can't be bothered to sit through that shit.
It's a 3-minute video.
Well, overall, I would say that from what I've noticed over these last few years and in some of the problems that we've talked about today, it feels like I think it was Griffin, you mentioned that there might be some internal struggle with communication there and making sure that we get the right news at the right time. And I think that's something that they really need to work on, is just making sure that we're getting the right messaging for what's actually going on or expected.
They might not know, though, what the community want to know about until the community wants to know about it.
But
it's about the other way, though. What if
that,
they actually can't get the people? What if there's an actual skills shortage?
Well, I feel like that's part of the community management team thing, right? Like the company should be calling on their community management team, and like they've got a kind of a pulse on the community and what's going on. How are announcements going to go over? And that's actually a topic I wanted to jump to, if you guys don't mind. We're about actually halfway through this right now. Everybody who is here with us, thank you so much. And if you are listening or watching after the fact, appreciate you. We've got some heavyweight hitters from the community here on the talk today, and I realized that I didn't get my intros done today. So now it's a little half intro epilogue, not epilogue, what is it called? Intermission kind of thing. Go to the bathroom. Actually, don't go to the bathroom. We're introducing. I'd like everybody to go real quick though through their names and just let everybody know, like, do you cover this kind of content on your own channels? Do you stream about it? What do you do with Star Citizen? And Avenger One, you go ahead first.
Hi, my name is Avenger One. I've been doing content in Star Citizen for a few years now, and I do mostly combat PvP and the effects of combat in the game, and also mindset.
Thanks.
Oh, well, you didn't tell me my name. How did I meant to know? I'm Execute. I'm from the Infrunners. I hang out with Space Tomato, Astro Pub, Our Grid, Badgers, a whole bunch of other people. We talk about deep dive, lots of different discussion. I help a lot of people with their ships, fixing their fleets, getting more value for the money they've spent, things like that. And I get guys like, well, I haven't had any of these guys on, actually, but I will try and get some of these guys on and have some discussions. I had Level Cap on recently and Moist Noodle and a few people like that. Just talking about the game. Yeah.
Who's next?
That's you, Board. Yeah,
that's me.
Yeah.
So I'm Bod Gamer. I've been covering Star Citizen since relatively early days, and I try to get at least a video out a day, just talking about Star Citizen news, talking about Star Citizen, what's happening in the community, a little bit of gameplay, but not much gameplay. I think trying to do a load of gameplay is hard at Star Citizen. Anyone that is a Star Citizen streamer or trying to produce constant game content on this, I think that's hard work, and I have a lot of respect for you. But Star Citizen news and ships and stuff like that, I talk about all the time. I think there's a load to cover.
I think there's a constant fight between me and Board sometimes when it comes up to AIE. You're always getting there just before me, and I'm like, oh, he's son of a bitch. I'm trying to get. He's so quick. I can't beat him.
I mean, Board puts it into practice for most of the year.
He's got it down pat.
Yeah.
He's got it down pat.
I'm still been talking about Pyro for 3 years. Been talking about that. Still good. Same video. Just I don't repeat.
Yeah, that's.
Hey, Griffin.
Yeah, I'm GriffinGaming. I'm the producer of Soul Citizens, also one of the co-hosts there, and we do a weekly panel show as well as 2 other community shows on Thursdays and Fridays, basically talking about topics in Star Citizen and Squadron.
Cool. That's one of our favorite topics. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you again for coming and doing this little halfway intro, letting the people know. Check out down below. We've got links to all their channels if you want to see their content. But let's continue on with the topic. So this is kind of branching off of something that somebody said now, but also that we got earlier about marketing. And that is the relationship that CIG has with the community kind of sometimes feels like they don't entirely know what the community is looking for. Now, obviously, community is freaking huge, and there's no way to know what every part of it wants. Like, there's people who don't check in, there's people who only check in with Reddit or YouTube or Twitter or whatever. But overall, the people who pay attention kind of have a pulse of the thing that they're interested in, that they're asking for. And oftentimes it feels like CIG is a bit disconnected from that. Do you feel like there is some struggle for them to make better use of the community managers to keep that line going?
I've got a great question for everyone. Do you think they talked to the community team from the marketing team when they decided to pitch the Odyssey last year?
That's a question.
That'll be more of a marketing thing. That'll be almost entirely marketing.
Yeah.
But do you think if they went to the community management team, they would have gone, no, don't do this. It's a terrible idea, because they sold it as an Explorer and it's really clearly a survey ship. And I just think they pitched it completely wrong. They don't almost know the audience they're pitching to. We're very, like, every person I talk to is very informed before they buy anything. And it just seemed totally wrong to me as an example.
Overall, I don't know.
Go ahead, Griffin. Sorry.
No. I was going to say, I don't know what that ship is. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we don't know what exploration is in Star Citizen yet. We don't know what science is in exploration. I mean, these terms have been thrown out. And once again, I think all of us geeky sci-fi fans have our own versions of what we think it's going to be. You know, you walk through a DUR, or you walk through an Aquila, or you walk through, and there's like these, these panels and stuff sitting there, but we don't know what the heck they do. So even when you go back and look at the old design docs, they gave us some ideas. That was last year, they gave us some ideas about sending out the probes and being able to set them up and figure out what's in the system. That was one of the first times I really heard them start talking about how the Carrack would start using that drone room. So I'm really cautious about the Odyssey. I do see it as hopefully an alternative, not a competitor to the Carrack, which if it comes out. But I don't know, the marketing versus the community managers, and I want to go back to that. I do think that there needs to be a definite communication that's clear with them. Definitely not enough community managers. I felt that for a long time, because right now they only have like 1 or 2. They only have like 1. Is it 4 now? And they're all regional. They're all regional.
They just got a 4th one.
Yeah,
Only
no,
just.
they need to have. I'm not trying to be funny. There needs to be like freaking 3 and 4 in each region, as far as I'm concerned.
100% agree.
And some of them come and go. There's only a couple of them that have been around for a while. The ones in the UK, I would love to hear what goes on over there with their people, but I only hear from Tyler and Jake over here. I don't hear from the other folks in the other countries. So I don't know. I feel like as big as this has grown, back in the day, I get it. But now it's grown to a point where there needs to be way more community managers on the Twitches, on the YouTubes, much more. And I get it. Back in the mom and pop days, somebody used that term earlier. We used to see them a lot more, but it's gotten bigger and they need more people to support that, because it's great to know Tyler. But I could imagine Xylo and them. I mean, like last week, you were with us when we did the virtual. We had Tyler there. There are times we've had Tyler, we've had Jake and Disco all sitting in that room at the same time for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. But then there's other stuff going on in the community, and there needs to be other people who can flexibly be there too. Not just it's just a few of them, and they need more.
I do think they do a relatively good job in some ways. Like, but there's obviously certain amounts of stuff they can show us if it's going to be so proximate to if it's going to be short term in our hands, like within the next 6 months. There is only a certain amount of stuff they can show. They don't want to overly sort of repeat the same old stuff. So there is only a certain sort of level of stuff that they can actually reach and actually get to us. But they do share a lot of information with the roadmap, with the monthly report, with Inside Star Citizen, Star Citizen Live. There is a bit of cognitive dissonance, though, with marketing versus what they show us community managers and that sort of stuff. And I just like them to be more, I don't know, proactive rather than reactive. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about what? Sorry, what do you have to say about what Griffin said? There's only 4 community managers. I find that astounding. It's like you said, there should be heaps more, and I don't get that. Like what? And I think it is a staffing issue. That's why I keep coming back to it.
Why don't they consider running not just community? Like maybe this is a pipe dream, but I've always kind of been throwing this idea around because Tarkov has some kind of. They have these things called Sherpas and stuff, right? Now, why don't we have members of the community on YouTube and on Twitch and other? And I'm not trying to advocate for myself here. I'm saying, why don't we pick individuals from the community that are picked by the community managers to help also with this task of information and
they kind of
stuff?
do. I think there's a level of communication that CIG have with some content creators, with quite a few, just emails, small amounts. But they've also got their systems for guide system and stuff like that. I think that is literally grooming people into those sort of roles in the future. That's what it feels like to me. I mean, I'm not sure, but I think everyone's on the same page that.
Well, do you know how many people actually know that exists? Like, so many new people have no clue that even exists.
Because it's through the website. There's a problem with a lot of this
and the
stuff.
website
you have to go through the website, not the game.
Don't get started on that. We'll be here forever.
That's a whole the website is terrible.
Yeah, Turbulent. You need to up your game.
But I want to go back to something Board said. I'll make this real quick. Board, you touched on this too. The difficulty too is that there's so many sources for information. To go after all of it, I don't care if it's the Squadron 42 newsletter, the weekly newsletter, ISC, SCL. I just recently started going back and watching Around the Verse from episode 1 and 10 for the Chairman from episode 1. There's so much information, and some of it was repeated, some of it was said once.
Can you imagine if there was a wiki that had actually somehow put all the questions there for all these years?
Oh my God.
Oh, it would have saved so much time.
It's crazy. 10 questions times Chris times 70 or 80 shows, 800 answers. It's crazy.
I have a question.
I'm not sure if you're joking or not. I can't tell.
I have a question though about that. Back then, do you guys have any idea how many community managers there were? What the size of the team was? Were there any?
Oh,
Ben, it was
Wingman.
It was Ben. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. Ben and Sandy, kind of.
No, it was Wingman as well. It was Wingman's hangout.
Wingman. Way back. Yeah.
They had that guy
So
I had that guy that had the dog that got let go after Disco came in. I can't remember his name either.
Oh, Pew. Was it Pew? John? Was it Pew?
John Pew.
Yeah, Pew, was a little short guy.
No. His girlfriend was the lady that did Ship Shape. And so when he got let go, she gave 2 weeks notice.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name, but yeah.
There was another gentleman as well, wasn't there? That was a community manager that appeared on Ice inside Star Citizens.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, at one point we used to see the other ones, like the Tyler who's over is he in Germany or UK? We used to see him once in a while. I haven't seen him pop up.
The guy from New Zealand? The
Was
guy
he from New Zealand? Was that what
he was New Zealand, but he lives in the UK. I know the guy you're talking about. I forgot his
Cameron.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see
that's
any
it.
of
Cameron.
them.
Cameron. That's it.
No, I'm not talking about Cameron. I'm talking about the other Tyler. Remember, there were 2 Tylers. There was Xylo, and then there was the other guy. Remember? And last time I saw him was a citizen. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, we don't see the other community manager. I don't see him. I mean, you guys do over there, but I don't see him over here in the States.
That's a question too. What do you guys feel about having other hosts for localization? So, why don't they have a German show? Why don't they have a Korean show? Why don't they have a British and an American show? Well, they've got the money. There's no way. Like it was in 2018, 3.5 million. No way we got.
Make sure that the information was not different.
No, we just got to get
Korean, buddy.
Okay, let me just learn German quickly.
We just got to get a board language library. Got to have a little AI.
So localization's a good idea, but not when it's overly complex.
Yeah.
But that goes back to the problem that you kind of were getting at there, is that it feels like, and I know people in chat are pointing out some other community managers. There are people on the team overall who get involved, but it doesn't feel like the team that helps with that sort of relationship between CIG, who, let's be honest, is very marketing driven, and the community, who is basically keeping the game alive. They need some melding with that team. And like you said, it feels like they might be a little bit understaffed in that aspect. Now, we know that there's a lot of balance that goes into the finances of this. None of us, I think, would claim to be anywhere near knowledgeable enough to make a call for them finance-wise. But it does feel like the engagement with the community is not really getting the lion's share of hires. How do you guys feel about that?
What? So I don't even know what you mean by that, really.
Well, do you feel like they need a bigger community team?
Yes.
And is that
absolutely?
Do you think that's going to solve their communication problems?
No.
No, it solves a presence. Well, it does solve a presence problem.
It alleviates it though. It gets less pressure. You got more minds to go around. More things can be done.
Yeah, it's interesting. Last week when we were watching the show with John Crew, when he was on, and he talked about how he spent the weekend on Reddit listening to what people had to say. I mean, that's great. I love hearing that they find time to sit on their own time and listen to what the community has to say. And it's him being a developer. But the community relations side of it, and I don't get me wrong, I love Xylo and them. They're great. I just can't imagine. Like right now, they're touring. We're getting ready to have our Chicago Stars Bar Citizen next week, and they're sending Jake, and somebody else is coming here. But I mean, I can't imagine. These guys are having to travel around the country now, make personal appearances to make up for the fact that we can't have our big citizen cons. Then they have to make presences on social media. It's a lot. And I don't know. I just think we need to have just a couple more. I mean, man, at least double it. Because everything's grown. It's not the same as it. We had 4 people 5 years ago. It's grown since then.
It's never going to be enough though, and it's never going to be. They're not communicating everything, because there's always going to be people that want something covered that can't be covered yet, or they haven't got time to. Because they do produce a lot of shows, but there's not enough time for them to make all these shows, and they can't just go, well, actually, let's hire another 3 Disco Landos and actually make 3 times the amount of shows. I mean, there's only a certain amount of content they can show each week, without it sort of being sort of a bit sort of
I meant more just community managers in the sense of those advocates. I don't necessarily need to see another bunch of disco shows, but just the relationship thing, because it's important. For people who came out of Elite, they'll tell you about community managers and how terrible it was over with the Elite community. I didn't realize until all this fiasco happened over the last year how badly the communications were over there. So, I just feel like it just seems like since we've grown, that department may just need to grow a little bit. That's all.
I do feel like the developers themselves are super, super helpful in the way that they reach out to us, from, Sylvan from the team working on Gen 12, who's answering people's questions, to sorry, to Yogi, who's answering combat questions. Avenger, I know you were very involved in that discussion. That's always been a big help, and I think that's one of my favorite things about covering a game like Star Citizen is that the developers, I mean, they'll be in stream talking to us, you know, or in Discord or in voice chat or somewhere communicating with the community, and I love that. But it does sometimes, I do feel
there are some guys that go the extra mile.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah.
all be so thankful.
Yeah.
For real. You know what I mean? Because anybody that's CIG that's not the community manager has no obligation to give you any of their time. It's just that simple. And some people, they don't like that and they get upset with it. That's fine. But at the end of the day, they're a big company. They got a job to do and they're trying to get things done. And the reality of it is, this is going to sound.
Say it.
Well, it's just there's a portion of the community that sometimes behaves like children. Right.
Mhm.
And,
Sometimes.
you know, if you behave like children, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
it's
just
a-
that
I've
simple.
got a really good thing to connect it
Yeah.
to what you were saying is Spectrum. How many of us actually go to Spectrum? No, I've got to say it, right? Because I found out that they actually had a design decision to not put downvotes into that thing, right? And that is so stupid
Yeah,
because
that was
how do you
weird.
get you go there and there is nothing but negativity, and you can't get negativity off if you can't vote it off. It's just stupid.
There is a little bit of joy I have with the devs turning up occasionally and answering questions. Is that, and I actually quite like it being a bit erratic because it brightens up my day when I see a dev answering loads of questions and getting a load of interaction, sort of fearlessly, and then people going, "Oh, thank you so much for engaging with the community." Every time that happens with a different dev on a different day, fantastic.
Yeah.
It brightens up my day, and I'm glad that isn't sort of. I would like it regular; it'd be amazing. But it's a nice little nugget there.
Yeah.
Can I toss something in? People think I'm Mr. Sunshine when it comes to Star Citizen, so let me give you the Darth Vader side of me. I don't know how they do things like when the Spirit came out, put out the bad spec sheet. That to me at this point, we shouldn't be seeing that happen anymore. It was too basic, too straightforward. That with a sale like that at CitizenCon,
Didn't they have to update the specs?
Numbers? Yeah, they did. The numbers were completely wrong on it, and I'm like, who let that get through? That I'm sorry. And I mean, people were saying, oh, well, they were busy. They were getting that you've been doing ships too long for specs to be wrong like that, especially when people are looking to spend money.
Why not?
It's crazy.
Leak it to the Evocati a day before. Because then you just get a load of people going, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong.
Just check your work for you.
Yeah.
But it's true. That's like the biggest thing that they do for the game. We always talk about like, oh, you know, they might miss a patch date, but they'll never miss a ship sale. And then they put out a ship tech page and it's wrong, which is.
What if I told you that they might have missed some ship sales? What would you think then?
I would believe
I
it.
can confirm they have.
Yeah.
I can confirm that they have.
I would believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's stuff I may have seen during office tours, which is still yet to be announced or in our hands.
Yeah.
I saw that. What was that thing? The board bunny. I saw that. No one else will get the joke, but we will.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're a bad dragon, you are.
Yeah. Dragon. Oh, impressive. Thank you.
Well, yeah, so that's kind of another thing is like the tech pages, the spec pages, the website as a whole is kind of execute. You almost got into it earlier. We'll stay away from that rant, but the website is kind of rough, and it doesn't help when they put out things that have to do with the ships that people are spending money on, and they don't go over well like that. Somebody
do a poll, Space. Just chuck up a poll. How many people think they need to redo the website? And I guarantee it'll astronomically high.
Me, I think they need to.
Just chuck it up there.
It's
Go
easy
on.
enough to see when you do one thing on the website, you click a link, it takes you to another part of the website, and it looks like a different website.
Yeah. I would say this about the website, you know, and this is for all of us who've been around from back in the day when everything had its rough edges. We were willing to deal with that because we understood the dynamic. But you've got people now coming in who honestly don't know the history, the background. They just see a great YouTuber with a game that happens to be running very well that day, and they say, I want to play Star Citizen. And when you get to the site, it is just rough. I mean, it's just rough. People have talked to me a lot of times. We have to go back and do shows, like we were doing this series called Shipyard, where we went back and talked about all the manufacturers. And you go back and pull up documents, and they're from 2014, 2015. Now, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is it still current? Is it relative? Is it still meaningful? If you put a date at the bottom of the thing that says 12/21, that let me know back in December somebody went back and that's still the current plan, I'm cool. But when it says 2014, I don't know if stuff has changed over the last years and if I can rely on that information. And I know it's got to be tough for new players who are coming in.
The matrix of lies.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I actually talked to a gentleman 2 weeks ago that it was his first day into the game, and he told me it took him 2 days to find the actual website.
Because it's not starcitizen.com.
2 days to find
Yeah, Robert Space Industries, you wouldn't be looking for that, right?
It also took him 45 minutes to get out of the hab room because he didn't know about the F key. But
Google is powerful, my friend. But they need to. It would be nice if they had a better redirect. Listen, let's get back to the communication aspect here, though. Just to kind of close things off, I do want to ask about your own opinions or thoughts on what they could be doing to improve on communication. We've talked about a couple different subjects, from the way they handle kind of patch information, how they're like the delays are being handled, their community management team, the size of it, to the pages that they release on ships having errors. There are several ways in which I think they could improve in this, but what's something that you guys would want to see?
I kind of want to go back to them giving us the details and just being bluntly honest with us, and rely on people like us content creators to level out the people that are don't understand the full ramifications of games development. Because I think if they let us help them, we will help them, right?
Some of us
but
will.
That's again.
Some of us will make it worse.
Some of us going to read them.
It's kind of what Board said. They've got to pick the people that they know that can help them, and don't pick the others. You know, go to the people for certain things that no. What?
That elitism is dangerous.
That's so shit.
Yeah. No. What I'm saying is, you go to the certain content creators that can help you one thing. Go to other content creators that can help you other things. So go to the people that can help you, and we will help you. Right? You can't tell me you guys wouldn't help if someone came to you and asked for help.
I mean, it's very idealistic. That's how it would go.
Sorry.
I like the idea.
No. Sorry.
Yeah.
Don't be sorry. In theory, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I think there's a little bit of a worry that then some content creators become the priests of the new order.
So favoritism. You're talking about favoritism. Yeah,
a mixture of favoritism and controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
Like you don't want that content creator to then be pushing their agenda of the game forward, but before what they're supposed to be doing, which is, in your idea, shepherding the ideas to the community.
Can't they cycle it? Can't they cycle it in a different?
You don't want to be like Board Gamer and on the payroll, okay? You have to understand that, all right?
That's give me money, CIG. Give me
it's
money.
It's a shill, not PN. No, what is it? NordVPN. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's what would happen. People would be saying, if you're speaking too positively or correctly, next thing you know, you're on the payroll for CIG. I mean, that's the negatives that I see that comes out of that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the idea, execute, but it's scary, man.
Well, something's got to give. Something's got to change. They either need to shit to loads more stuff, or they used us for testing. Why can't they use content creators and other people? I understand where I'm trying to understand why they're withdrawing, right? And they are withdrawing. That's it. Like we all agree that, right? They're withdrawing as time's gone on. Is it just because we're getting more of a casual audience, or is it because they're scared? And I'm trying to understand why. Or if we just taught them every time they do something, we act in such a shitty way, they're just like, well, if we don't talk, they'll never know shit.
I think it's a mixture of several different things. I think you nailed some of them there. They definitely have gotten their hands bitten a lot after giving too much news, which is their fault and our fault. But yeah, also the game's getting more complete. It's getting more casual. The things that they're doing are getting a little bit more. There's more interesting stuff for them to show that they can hide the less interesting stuff behind. I think like they can show us how these new speed modes are coming along because it has very quantifiable, tangible impact to us that we know. Whereas there's something else that's more techie that maybe they're not showing to us right now that they totally could be because they don't need to. We're already excited about that stuff.
People want to see progress. That's what I really believe that the majority of people, and here's the reality, and I've been sitting on this point for listening to everyone talk, and I really truly believe this, that CIG in reality does not know what is going to happen next year. They're dealing with building a game and building core tech that hasn't really been done to this degree or this level before. They got a lot of moving parts. And when they say, well, we're going to aim for this one here, and they put it out there, the reality is what they get back does not outweigh the investment of them giving the information out, right? So that's problem number one. Problem number two is because they don't really know what is going on or in terms of what they're actually going to achieve, they're being very careful with the information they do put out because the reality is people say they want open development, but they really want to see progress. They want to sign on. They want to go to YouTube. They want to go to Spectrum or whatever. And they want to click on some things and they want to see, what's this new picture of a ship that's coming out? And they want it to be accurate. And they want what they see is relatively what they get later on down the road. And they want to see that in succession. They don't care about tools that are made. Like, great, you made a dev tool. Congratulations.
And
now you can move.
They actively don't want mistakes and they don't want delays. That's the other thing. They want to be a winner, not a loser.
You can't be accurate with R&D though. Like it's like so the example I give is it's like cancer. It's like curing cancer. Yeah. If I went to you, all right, Mr. Avenger, I'm going to send you off, and I would like you to cure cancer. How long is it going to take? You can't tell me. You just can't tell me, right? It's the same thing with this. This is all R&D, never been done before, and all of game development is like that.
I reckon he can tell you. I reckon he might say.
Well,
I can't cure cancer.
Avenger, that's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like you're getting at. Is that they can't be that open because they can't. Yeah. They don't know.
They can be that open, but they're choosing not to be because in the past they've been burned for it, right?
Yep.
And on one side of the spectrum, you can argue, and again, there's good sides, there's good arguments to be made on both sides. One, if you're gonna release a ship with stats, make sure the fucking stats make sense, right? That's number one, right? If you're gonna, like, if you're gonna show stuff to people, like at least get it in the ballpark, right? But and so sometimes that's CIG, maybe drinking a little bit too much space schnapps, right? And that's fine. I mean, we give them shit for that, cool, right? But for God's sake, I mean, we have no fucking clue what this game is going to look like a year from now. CIG has no clue. Nobody knows, right?
I've just had a crazy idea. Why don't we just go get the developers, like us five right here, and we go get 5 developers and we do a show where we just ask them all these questions and they bloody tell us. Why don't we do that? Like, we just, no, seriously. Why don't we just, and they probably don't want to tell us, but I'm saying, like, if we go there as a community, like a whole bunch of content creators and go, look, we just want a few basic answers on this shit.
Are you talking about a riot?
What's going on? Maybe, I don't know. But do you know what I mean? Like, how do you, like, no, I want to do it in, like one of the things we do on Infront is always, critical feedback or constructive criticism, right? To actually, don't just go, hey, we're sick of this shit. I want to go, we're kind of annoyed about this. Can you tell us why you're doing it this way so we can help you fix it?
Well, we do that.
Maybe we can help. Maybe we can be a part of the solution instead of just sitting here ranting and raving.
During the July, August time when a lot of people were putting out, forum posts, Reddit posts, videos, blog posts, everything about kind of like, can we get some communication on what's going on with 318? I don't think we really got much. And I think people do go out of their way to try and ask these questions. I mean, just look at the threads for Star Citizen Live. A lot of them are repeats, but a lot of them tend to ask some pretty good questions that don't get answered for, whatever reason.
It would be really nice for them to have a fortnightly or a monthly just Spectrum post where they literally just go and address community questions.
Have you been watching Monty Grail the whole time while we've been here talking? Like, what is going on?
Hold on.
That's our riot that we're bringing to CIG.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Check. Yeah.
For anybody who's
not pitchforks and axes.
For anybody who's not watching the video, that probably doesn't make any sense. Sorry. So what were you saying?
Yeah.
just a monthly Spectrum post or a fortnightly Spectrum post, literally called Addressing the Community, and they just have a load of community questions that they then answer. Bam, 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 bam. I think that would be really nice.
You've got to have those downvote arrows, though. Like, if you actually look at the statistics on how Google works, as an example, do you know only 30% of people go to the second page? So in Spectrum, you've got to go to the second page and upvote them just to get the ones off the top. It doesn't work.
No,
It just doesn't work. They need downvote arrows. I'm sorry.
Then,
you think it's...
But then people will just complain that the votes are being downvoted to oblivion, and it's really unfair.
Yeah, because they're shit questions.
Censorship. Because people don't like my
not a democracy. No, not a democracy.
Well, yeah.
There are groups out there. There are groups out there that will target people and downvote.
They sure will.
They post stuff.
A bunch of them will go out there and shut it down. Can I toss in on something? Execute said this in Avenger 2 and talked about the reasons why, or what CIG can do better, and this idea of transparency and open development. Last week I was on talking about this, and I said, there's a part of me that gives a little bit more grace to this, because I equate the development of this game to you guys all, I'm sure all of us are Star Wars fans, and we know the history of how those games and movies are produced. And quite often when George Lucas would come into the room with his production team, he would show all his storyboards, and then he would leave. And then his tech people would say, how the hell are we supposed to do this? The technology wasn't there. They had to literally create the technology in order to make those movies. He innovated every time. When the last 3 Star Wars films came out and they asked George Lucas, what did you think of the films? His response was not about the acting or the story. It was about there was no innovation. And innovation takes time. Creating something that's going to be around for 10, 15, 20 years takes time. And most gamers have not experienced a game or been around long enough to understand that dynamic. And I'm saying that as the old man in the room at age 59. I want this game to be around for a long time. I don't want it to be a flash in the pan. We need to look at the history of big AAA developers games that have just recently come out, whether it's Bethesda, whether it's Electronic Arts. Look at the games with Cyberpunk. All these big games that we had high expectations for, the companies that have track records, every freaking one of them when they released were not ready. They had to work on them another year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. No Man's Sky, the vision of it was great. It started in freaking 2009 with that. 2013, it gets announced at E3. 2016 comes out, it's terrible. It is just now getting to the place where it's at the vision that they wanted. That's 11 years later.
Fantastic.
Yeah, 11 years later, right? So we're not paying attention to the circle or the arc of development on some of these games. Elite Dangerous, when it came out, most of us backed it. We baited it, we loved it, but there were people saying, see, how come CIG didn't put theirs out like that? Look at what's happening with it now. The engine's not working. They've only been able to take it so far. So I think you got to look at gaming across the board and ask, did CIG take the right path in doing this? Now, I'm not talking about Squadron, because Squadron, they've had their faux pas with that. I agree. Chris put out, they did 2 years, 3 years. That wasn't happening. But my point is now, in the development of this and communication, and I agree with you, Avenger. I think that there's a certain aspect of that they could share, but I still think there's that tight wire of how much do we say, especially now. You guys were around back in the day of Mr. DS. Remember those years of all that hack and all the hate that came out, both from the community and from outside, from the industry. We've also to think about the fact that the industry doesn't want to see. There are people in the industry that don't want to see CIG succeed with what they're doing with this whole model. So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that us as gamers, we're all freaking backseat quarterbacking when it comes to this developer thing. We really are. Most damn people I talk to who are in the industry who make games, they say, I get what CIG's doing. When you think, we've forgotten what it's like to walk on your freaking ship. Do you guys remember what it was like the first time you walked on the ship and it was spinning around in 300? That was virtually impossible. We've forgotten that we weren't supposed to be able to land on planets anywhere we wanted to. And some of these jokers don't even know it. And there's people don't even know what a freaking 30K is right now because that's disappeared. Okay.
Lucky.
So, my point is, yeah,
they're getting on at the right time.
Yeah. So my point is, again, where's that line for true transparency? I think there's a lot of folks out there that feel entitled. They spent their $20 or their $200 or their $2,000 and say, I'm not hearing enough. And there are other people who kind of like, they get it. They may be, we're all impatient. We all want the game. I get that. But God knows I want a game that's going to be around 10, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't want 6 months after this game comes out that I'm thinking about the next thing. And that's what most gamers are used to. They're on to the next flavor of the month.
Absolutely.
And we don't want Star Citizen to be that.
I will say that 100%. Before I found Star Citizen, I was going from game to game to game to game. And there were some games that would stick with me regularly, but I've never stuck with a game for more than a couple of years if it didn't have something multiplayer going on. So that's true. Real
Griffin,
quick, I want
that. Oh, mine's real quick. Griffin, after that speech, I think you have to be the L. Jones of Star Citizen. I'm
sorry.
I was going to say
no,
that
it was great. It was great.
It was fantastic.
You'd be bottling
points.
it in all day.
Those are fantastic
really well
points
done.
you made. And I want to double down on something you said there. We're all backseat. Like we can talk, we can make the videos, we can run the streams, we can give you the information that CIG gives us, and it may sound confident and it may sound like it knows what's going on, but nobody actually knows what's going on except for the people who are running the shots and making the game.
We hopefully know what's going on.
We hope those are the people that know, yeah. But
does the tail know what the head is doing? Yes.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
But seriously, I think that's important.
We learn from each other. We learn from each other too. I listen to all these guys in here.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too. I mean, I listen to what the community says, but there's stuff. Bored, I hate to say it, dude. You're on my radio, dude, when I'm driving in the car. I ain't looking at your face, but I'm sure listening to you because that's how I get a lot of my long-form information. But then Noobifier is the person when I didn't get time to listen to SCL that I flip on and turn him on. I'll watch Avenger because of combat and tell people, hey, if you want to know about combat, check out this dude Avenger. Execute. I hate him because he hates Origin, but I love watching his show every freaking week. You know, I love him. I watch his show all the time, him and Algorithm. So, I mean, we're all learning from each other as well as from CIG, you know.
I can relate to that too. Same thing with all these gents as well.
Yeah. We sit here on the podcast and talk about this stuff, but I want everybody to know that what we're saying here is our opinion. It's how we feel about it. It's the things that we think that CIG could be doing better, but ultimately it comes down to what they decide, and everybody's going to have their own say on that. Were there any other things that you guys wanted to put in terms of kind of the final thoughts on this topic, on open development, on the communication, anything that you maybe didn't get to say?
I don't like CIG doing extreme changes in the way they give us information. Like by that, what I mean is I'm fine with them adding new stuff, but I hate it when they replace something. They go, no more Inside Star Citizen. Now we're doing Inside the Verse, and it's very different. And we go, what? Why have you changed it so drastically? Like, so I hope they don't do more of that because it looks like they're going to have some changes happening. Yeah, like. Is it going to be good?
Yeah. Well, they're going to change it.
I think ISC is good. One of the things Disco shared with us at one of the Virtual Bar Citizens was they really started building that show, particularly around their analytics that they got from YouTube. And even though they were doing those hour-long shows, what they really found out was what is the time frame that people really spend looking at a show. And they found that they were putting all that production time in, and it was being wasted. So ISC is literally, they've kind of refined it down to that 8 minutes to 15 minutes that most people will sit there and watch that, absorb, and then they're not wasting time producing all this other material that basically after 30 minutes people would shut off. So
they could do 2 shows.
I agree, and that's what. But it's also extended the amount of stuff that can go out now because they do that, right?
We'd be able to agree with you on that too, wouldn't we, Board? That's basically what our analytics tell us. So I assume yours is about the same too, yeah?
You look at analytics.
Come on. Don't tell me you don't. I've seen your vidIQ stuff, so I know you have.
And they go, oh, what do the bones tell me? They tell me 4.0 next week.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this talk. I think this was an important one. And a lot of people are always talking about, how much is too much communication and how open should they be? Honestly, I think it's always changing, and it'll be interesting to see how they change over the next several years as like this starts to turn into a real game. I mean, when we get to the point where this game is getting coverage in like your average gaming YouTube channels, but like their weekly and monthly shows, I wonder what it's going to be like to get news on this from CIG if it'll still be this open, because that's a completely different landscape. So
Give me more CIG, not less. More, not less.
That is the takeaway from this talk. More, not less. That's what we want. And also maybe
I think
release
Board
the
wants
game.
to sharpen his pitchfork. He's getting ready.
No. I love CIG. I think they do good. They can always do better.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's a really good point. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it.
I think
Well,
people need to
folks.
reevaluate their outlook on open development in general. I think people take stuff way too much for granted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think if they just took a step back every once in a while, that would help a lot. I mean, it helped me because I mean, I was just like everyone else. I was like in it. You know what I mean? And then I was like every single thing. I was just like I
think that some of the stuff that we see, and because of the way the project's done, it does breed a little bit of entitlement, and sometimes that gets obviously disproportionately. Some people feel very entitled to certain things, and like, why aren't CIG doing this? They should be doing that, and then that can have a bit of toxicity online. Don't like that term, but
I think what you said there, Board, about how they can always do more or always do better. I think that applies to us too. Right?
yeah.
I think we can
I don't want to
more
though.
understanding. Yeah, well, that's human nature. But I think as a community, we need to teach each other more, and and stuff like that. And I think if we can come to the table and they come to the table, we'll probably have a good resolution.
Agreed. Well, thanks again, guys. Thank you all for watching this live, or if you're watching it after the fact, or listening on your favorite audio podcast platform. Thank you as well. One last time, please, guys, if you could go around the circle, just let everybody know real quick what you do, where they can find you, and then we'll be on our way. Go ahead and start with you, Avenger.
My name is Avenger1. You can find me on YouTube at Avenger1 and on Twitch at Avenger__1. I'm everything to do with combat and philosophy about combat and getting 1% better every day.
Oh, is it me? Oh. I was going to say I'm Board Gamer, but that doesn't work. No, I'm actually, you can find me at Infronters. Yeah, we do a bunch of whole stuff like that. Speculation, if you need help with your fleets, fixing stuff like that, buyer's guides, things like that. So, yeah. All right, Griff.
Griffin Gaming with Soul Citizens. You guys can check us out at twitch.tv/Soul Citizens, also on YouTube Soul Citizens, and all social media platforms. And thanks for having me.
I'm Board Gamer. You can find me at Board Gamer on YouTube's Board Game UK. I think I actually. Oh my god, I don't even know what my things are.
Send you to the
Board
wrong
Gamer
place.
UK on Twitch and on YouTube, and I just produce Star Citizen news content sort of every day. I will get a video out because there's so much information to trawl through from all the years, all the lies, and all the truth.
What do the bones say?
You'd be really good at a play that has a witch, like Hubble and Bubble, Toil and Trouble.
Who says I'm
doing that?
Who says I don't do that? As
Yeah,
a
I can
side
see it.
hustle.
Yep, moonlighting as the witch. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
He's got somewhere to be.
You can also find me on YouTube as The Witch.
The Board Witch. All right. All right. Thank you guys again. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I will see you all next month.